The morning sun cast long shadows through the reinforced glass dome of New Geneva, one of humanity's 17 remaining sky cities. Captain Marcus Wren stood at the edge of Platform 7, watching his salvage crew perform final checks on the Wanderer, his modified atmospheric transport. Below them, 3 kilometers down, lay the irradiated wasteland that had once been Earth. "Radiation levels are holding steady at 12,000 rads per hour down there, Captain," reported his engineer Zarachin, her voice crackling through the comm system. "The new shielding should give us maybe 6 hours before we start cooking." Wren nodded, adjusting the collar of his lead-line flight suit. 6 hours was more than enough for a standard salvage run. In the 5 years since he'd started making these descents, he'd learned to work fast. The ruins below held treasures that kept the sky cities running. Rare earth elements, intact electronics from the old world. Sometimes even preserved data cores that contained fragments of lost knowledge. "What's our target today?" asked Torres, his pilot, a grizzled veteran who'd been flying since before the Great Solar Flare. Wren consulted his tablet, scrolling through the request from New Geneva's Resource Council. "There's a pre-flare research facility about 40 kilometers northwest of the old Denver ruins. According to the archives, they were working on advanced medical technology. The Council thinks there might be equipment we can repurpose for the hospital's expansion." The Wanderer was a marvel of post-flare engineering, a hybrid vessel that could operate both in the Sky City's pressurized environments and in the hostile atmosphere below. Its hull was lined with lead composite plating, and its air recycling system could filter out most radioactive particles. Still, every descent was a gamble with death. As they descended through the cloud layer that perpetually shrouded the Earth's surface, Wren felt a familiar tightness in his chest. The ruins always affected him this way. He'd been 12 when the flare hit, old enough to remember the world before. The evacuation to the hastily constructed sky cities had saved maybe 2 million people out of Earth's 8 billion inhabitants. Everyone else had died in the first few days, as the planet's surface became a radioactive hellscape. "Breaking through the cloud cover now," Torres announced. Below them, the wasteland stretched endlessly in all directions. The landscape was a patchwork of twisted metal, crumbling concrete, and strange crystalline formations that had grown from the irradiated soil. Here and there, the skeletal remains of skyscrapers jutted up like broken teeth. Nature had tried to reclaim some areas, but the plants that grew were wrong. Twisted, luminescent things that pulsed with their own sick light. "There!" Wren pointed to a cluster of low buildings nestled in what had once been a mountain valley. "That's our target. Torres, set us down about a kilometer out. I don't want to land directly on top of whatever they were working on down there." The landing was smooth, the Wanderer's shock absorbers easily handling the rough terrain. Wren and his 2-person ground team, Zara and a young specialist named Kim Okafor, suited up in their environmental gear. The suits were bulky but necessary, providing both radiation protection and life support in the toxic atmosphere. "Stay close, and remember the protocol," Wren reminded them as they prepared to disembark. "We're looking for anything intact. Medical equipment gets priority, but don't ignore electronics or data storage. And if you see anything that looks like it might still be powered, call me before you touch it." The outside air hit them like a physical blow, even through their suits. The Geiger counters on their belts began their ominous clicking immediately. Wren had learned to tune out the sound years ago, but he kept one eye on the digital readout. As long as it stayed below critical levels, they could work. The research facility had weathered the decades better than most structures. Its buildings were low and reinforced, designed to withstand natural disasters. The solar flare had been anything but natural, but the robust construction had helped. Most of the windows were blown out, and the metal doors had warped from heat, but the basic structure remained sound. "Main entrance is blocked," Kim reported, examining a pile of debris that had once been the roof of an adjacent building. "But there's what looks like a service entrance on the east side." They made their way around the building, stepping carefully over chunks of concrete and twisted rebar. The Geiger counters clicking increased as they moved closer to the facility's center, and Wren made a mental note to limit their time inside. The service entrance had been blown open from inside, leaving a gaping hole in the reinforced wall. Emergency lighting strips along the corridor were somehow still functioning, casting an eerie blue glow over everything. The sight made Ren pause. After 37 years, nothing should still have power. Zara, are you seeing this? His engineer nodded, scanning the area with a handheld detector. There's definitely an active power source somewhere in this complex. The reading suggests some kind of fusion cell, way more advanced than anything we had before the flare. They moved deeper into the facility, following the main corridor past laboratories filled with overturned equipment and scattered papers. Most of the research materials had been destroyed by the initial electromagnetic pulse, but occasionally they found something intact. A piece of diagnostic equipment here, a sealed container of medical supplies there. It was in the third sublevel that they found the real treasure, a completely intact research laboratory that looked like it had been sealed moments before the flare hit. The room was pressurized and climate-controlled, its atmosphere safely breathable according to their sensors. Jackpot. Zara breathed, removing her helmet and breathing normally for the first time in hours. This is like stepping back in time. The laboratory was a marvel of pre-flare technology. Quantum computers hummed quietly in climate-control cabinets, their displays showing complex biological models that shifted and rotated in three-dimensional space. Microscopes and gene sequencers sat ready for use, and banks of storage tanks contained biological samples suspended in preservative solutions. But it was a central workstation that caught Ren's attention. A massive display showed what appeared to be a human genetic sequence, but portions that were highlighted in colors he didn't recognize. Subsidiary screens showed medical scans, cellular diagrams, and pages of dense scientific notation. Kim, start cataloging everything that's portable, Ren ordered. Zara, see if you can interface with that main computer. I want to know what they were working on here. As his team worked, Ren explored the rest of the laboratory. In a side room, he found something that made his blood run cold. A series of cylindrical chambers, each large enough to hold a human being. They were empty now, but the medical equipment surrounding them suggested they'd been used for some kind of experimental procedure. Captain, Zara called from the main computer terminal. You need to see this. He joined her at the workstation, where she'd managed to access the facility's research files. The data was staggering. Thousands of hours of recorded experiments, genetic analyses, and medical observations. At the center of it all was a project designation, Aurora Protocol. What am I looking at? Ren asked. Near as I can tell, they were working on genetic modification, Zara explained, scrolling through pages of data. Specifically, they were trying to create humans who could survive in high-radiation environments. According to these files, they'd achieved some kind of breakthrough just days before the flare hit. The implications hit Ren like a physical blow. If this research was legitimate, it meant someone had known about the solar flare in advance, had been preparing for it. The official story was that the flare had been completely unexpected, a freak solar event that had caught humanity completely off guard. There's more, Zara continued. The project wasn't just theoretical. They had test subjects, volunteers who'd undergone the genetic modification procedures. According to the final log entries, at least 12 subjects had shown complete immunity to radiation exposure. 12 people who could survive down here, Ren murmured. Where are they now? Before Zara could answer, Kim's voice crackled over the comm system from across the laboratory. Captain, you need to get over here right now. I found something in the storage room. They hurried to join him, finding Kim standing before an open storage cabinet that contained rows of medical files. His face was pale behind his helmet's visor. These are patient records, he said, holding up a thick folder. Detailed medical histories for the test subjects. But look at the dates. The last entries are from just 3 days ago. Ren felt the world tilt around him. That's impossible. No one's been down here for decades. The handwriting's fresh, Captain. And look at this. Kim opened the folder to reveal a photograph clipped to the inside cover. It showed a young girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, with distinctive silver hair and pale blue eyes. Her skin had a faint luminescent quality that seemed to glow in the photograph. Subject 12, Kim read from the file. Name, Elena Vasquez. Status, active. Current location, Compound 7, Sublevel 4. Current location? Ren repeated. You mean she's here? Now. Before Kim could respond, an alarm began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, and a computerized voice echoed to the corridors. Unauthorized personnel detected. Initiating lockdown protocols. Move! Ren shouted, but was too late. Steel shutters began descending across the laboratory's exits, sealing them inside. Their escape route was cut off, and somewhere in the depths of the facility, something was still very much alive. The lockdown left them trapped in a research laboratory with only their emergency supplies and whatever equipment they could salvage from the facility. The air recycling system had activated, sealing them into the laboratory's atmosphere. But their suit's power cells had maybe 12 hours of life support remaining if they needed to venture into the hostile areas of the complex. "Can you override the lockdown?" Ren asked Zara, who was frantically working at the main computer terminal. "I'm trying, but the security system is more sophisticated than anything we've seen topside," she replied, sweat beading on her forehead as she navigated through layers of encrypted protocols. Whoever designed this didn't want anyone getting in or out without proper authorization. Kim had spread the medical files across one of the laboratory's workbenches, studying them with growing amazement. "Captain, you need to see these records. Elena Vasquez isn't just immune to radiation. According to these tests, exposure actually makes her stronger. Her cellular regeneration rate increases exponentially when she's exposed to gamma radiation." "That's impossible," Ren said. But even as he spoke, he was thinking about the glowing plants outside, the strange crystalline formations that had grown from irradiated soil. The solar flare hadn't just poisoned the Earth. It had changed it, perhaps in ways they were only beginning to understand. A new sound echoed through the facility. Footsteps, light and quick, moving to the corridors beyond their sealed laboratory. Someone else was down here, and they were coming closer. "Hello?" A voice called out, young and clear, speaking perfect English with just a hint of an accent Ren couldn't place. "I know you're in there. The sensors picked up your ship when you landed." Ren motioned for his team to stay quiet, but the voice continued. "You don't need to be afraid. I'm not going to hurt you. I haven't talked to anyone new in such a long time." Against his better judgment, Ren moved closer to the sealed door. "Who are you?" he called out. "My name is Elena. Elena Vasquez. I think you found my file." The silver-haired girl from the photograph. Ren's mind raced. If she was down here, if she was real, then everything they thought they knew about the post-flare world was wrong. "Elena, we're trapped in here. Can you help us get out?" "I can override the lockdown," she said, and Ren could hear the smile in her voice. "But first, I need to know, are you from the Sky Cities? Are there really people living in the clouds?" "Yes," Ren replied. "We're from New Geneva. There are 17 cities, with maybe 2 million survivors total." There was a long pause, and when Elena spoke again, her voice was smaller, more vulnerable. "My teachers told me that everyone died except for the people in the research program. They said the Sky Cities were just a story, something to give people hope while they were dying. Teachers. That implied there were adults down here, people who'd been caring for this child in the decades since the flare. But who? And why had they lied to her about the Sky Cities?" "Your teachers were wrong," Ren said gently. "There are lots of people still alive. Would you like to see for yourself?" "More than anything," Elena whispered. A moment later, the steel shutters began retracting, and Ren got his first look at the most extraordinary person he'd ever encountered. Elena Vasquez appeared to be about 12 years old. Though the medical files suggested she was actually much older, the radiation immunity apparently came with dramatically slowed aging. Her silver hair cascaded down her back like liquid metal, and her pale blue eyes seemed to glow with their own inner light. Her skin had a luminescent quality that made her appear almost ethereal. She was dressed in a simple white jumpsuit that looked like it had been designed for the research facility, and she moved with an easy grace that suggested perfect health and vitality. Most remarkably of all, she wore no protective equipment despite standing in an environment that would kill an unmodified human in minutes. "You're beautiful," Kim said, then immediately blushed at his own words. Elena laughed, a sound like silver bells. "The modifications change how I look. Dr. Morrison said it was a side effect of the cellular restructuring." Her expression grew sad. "He died 2 years ago. Heart failure. I've been alone since then. You've been living down here by yourself for 2 years? Ren asked, horrified at the thought of a child surviving alone in this hostile environment. I'm not really alone, Elena said. The facility's AI helps take care of me, and there are the other modified plants and animals in the research gardens. But I miss talking to people. Dr. Morrison was the last of the original researchers. She led them through the facility, moving confidently through corridors that would have been death traps for normal humans. The deeper they went, the higher the radiation levels climbed. But Elena seemed to grow more vibrant with each level they descended. This is where I live, she said, opening a door marked residential section. Beyond was a living area that had been designed for long-term habitation. Comfortable furniture, a kitchen, even what appeared to be a recreation room with books and games. The original research team lived here during the final phases of the project. Elena explained. When the flare hit, the facility automatically sealed itself. The researchers who survived continued their work for decades, studying the long-term effects of the modifications. But they all died? Zara asked. Cancer mostly. Elena said matter-of-factly. The modifications only worked on children, and even then, only certain genetic types. The adults who were exposed to the procedures developed massive tumors within a few years. I'm the only success story. She showed them to a sitting area where they could remove their helmets safely. The facility's air recycling system keeping the atmosphere clean and breathable. As they settled in, Elena's excited questions came in a rush. What are the sky cities like? Do they really float in the clouds? How many people live there? Do you have families? Children? What do you do all day? Ren found himself describing life in New Geneva. The floating platforms connected by enclosed walkways, the hydroponic gardens that provided food, the careful rationing of resources, and the constant search for salvageable materials from the world below. Elena listened with rapt attention, her luminous eyes wide with wonder. It sounds amazing, she said when he finished. I've dreamed about seeing the sky cities ever since I was little. Dr. Morrison used to tell me stories about them, but he said they were just fairy tales. Why would he lie to you about that? Kim asked. Elena's expression grew troubled. I think he was afraid. Near the end, he kept talking about something called the Aurora Protocol, and how important it was that certain people never found out about me. He made me promise to hide if anyone ever came to the facility. But you didn't hide from us, Ren observed. I was tired of being alone, Elena admitted. And you seemed different from the people he was worried about. When I heard you talking about the medical equipment and helping the hospital, I knew you were good people. A chill ran down Ren's spine. Elena, who was Dr. Morrison afraid of? He called them the council, she said. He said they were the ones who really run the sky cities, and that they would do terrible things if they knew about the Aurora Protocol. He said they want to control who lives and who dies, and that someone like me would upset their plans. Ren exchanged glances with his team. The Resource Council of New Geneva was a governing body that assigned salvage missions and distributed recovered technology. If they were connected to this pre-flare research, if they had known about the solar flare in advance. Elena, he said carefully, would you like to come with us? Back to the sky cities? Her face lit up like the dawn. Could I really? But what about the radiation? Won't I hurt people? According to your medical files, you don't emit radiation, Zara said, having studied the technical specifications. You absorb and process it, but you're perfectly safe to be around. Elena jumped up from her chair, practically vibrating with excitement. I need to pack. I need to gather my things. Oh, this is the best day of my entire life. But as she hurried off to collect her belongings, Ren felt a growing sense of unease. If the Resource Council had connections to the Aurora Protocol, bringing Elena to New Geneva might be walking straight into a trap. On the other hand, leaving her alone in the facility seemed equally wrong. What do you think? He asked his team quietly. We can't leave her here, Kim said immediately. She's just a kid, and she's been alone for 2 years. It would be criminal. But if what she's saying about the council is true, Zara added, we could be putting her in serious danger by bringing her topside. Then we don't take her to New Geneva, Ren decided. There are other sky cities, places where the council's influence is weaker. Freehaven operates independently, and they've always been more democratic in their governance. Elena returned a few minutes later with a small bag of personal belongings, books, photographs, and what appeared to be a data crystal containing her medical records. She'd also brought along a small device that looked like a modified tablet computer. "This is how I communicate with the facility's AI," she explained. "Dr. Morrison programmed it to help me with my studies and to maintain the research equipment. I thought maybe the people in the Sky Cities could learn from it." As they prepared to leave the facility, Ren made one last stop at the main computer terminal. He copied as much of the Aurora protocol data as his equipment could hold, including detailed genetic analyses and medical procedures. If Elena was telling the truth about the Council, this information could be the key to understanding what had really happened during the solar flare. The journey back to the surface was surreal. Elena walked among them without any protective equipment, her luminescent skin actually growing brighter as they passed through areas of high radiation. She seemed completely at ease in a hostile environment, even stopping occasionally to examine the twisted plants and crystalline formations with scientific curiosity. "These formations are beautiful," she said, touching a cluster of purple crystals that made their Geiger counter scream. "They're actually a form of bacterial colony that feeds on gamma radiation." Dr. Morrison theorized that they might be the beginning of a new ecosystem, one adapted to the post-flare world. "You mean life has returned to Earth?" Ren asked, amazed. "In a way." Elena nodded. "It's different life, changed by the radiation, but life nonetheless. The planet isn't dead. It's just becoming something new." When they reached the Wanderer, Torres nearly fell out of his pilot's seat at the sight of Elena. "Captain, please tell me that's not a survivor you found down there, without protective gear." "It's complicated," Ren replied. "Elena, this is Torres, our pilot. Torres, Elena is immune to radiation. She's coming with us." "Immune to?" Torres stared at the girl, taking in her luminescent skin and silver hair. "Captain, with all due respect, what the hell did you find down there?" As they lifted off from the surface and began their ascent to the Sky Cities, Ren filled Torres in on what they'd discovered. The pilot listened in growing amazement and horror, occasionally glancing back at Elena, who was pressed against one of the ship's windows, watching the ruined landscape fall away below them. "So what's the plan?" Torres asked when Ren finished his explanation. "We're not going to New Geneva," Ren decided. "Set course for Freehaven. I have friends there who can help us figure out what to do next." "What about our salvage mission?" "The Resource Council is expecting us back with medical equipment." Ren looked back at Elena, who was now staring up at the cloud layer. They were approaching with wonder and anticipation. In her hands, she clutched a data crystal containing decades of advanced medical research, technology that could revolutionize healthcare in the Sky Cities if it fell into the right hands. "Tell them we encountered complications and had to abort the mission," he said. "We'll file a full report when we get back." But even as he said it, Ren knew they weren't going back. Not to New Geneva, not to the life he'd known before. Elena represented something more than just a scientific miracle. She was hope for humanity's future, proof that adaptation and survival were possible even in the harshest conditions. She was also, if Dr. Morrison had been right about the Council, in terrible danger from the very people who were supposed to protect her. As the Wanderer broke through the cloud layer and the first Sky City came into view, not New Geneva, but Freehaven, with its distinctive biodomes and independent solar arrays, Elena gasped in wonder. "It's real," she whispered, tears streaming down her luminescent cheeks. "It's actually real." Ren hoped it would remain real and safe for all of them. Freehaven floated 3 kilometers above the Nevada wasteland, its biodomes and solar collectors gleaming in the afternoon sun. Unlike the rigid corporate structure of New Geneva, Freehaven had grown organically over the decades, its platforms and walkways expanding in response to the needs of its inhabitants rather than following some master plan. As the Wanderer approached the city's landing bays, Ren could see Elena's face pressed against a window, her luminescent eyes wide with wonder. She'd been asking questions nonstop since they broke into cloud layer about the floating platforms, the energy systems, the people moving to the transparent walkways that connected the various sections of the city. How many people live here? She asked for the third time. About 60,000, Wren replied. Freehaven was one of the smaller evacuation sites during the flare, but it's grown over the years. They've taken refugees from other cities, people who don't fit into the more structured communities. People like us? Torres asked with a grin. People like us, Wren confirmed. The landing bay was a bustle of activity, as usual. Freehaven's economy was built on trade and innovation rather than the strict resource allocation that characterized cities like New Geneva. Merchants and traders from across the Sky City network brought their goods here, creating a vibrant marketplace that operated around the clock. Wren had sent a coded message ahead to an old friend, and he wasn't surprised to see Sarah Chin waiting for them as they disembarked. Sarah had been one of the original engineers who'd helped design the Sky City's floating platforms, and she'd become something of a legend in Freehaven for her work on sustainable technology. Marcus Wren, she said with a smile, embracing him warmly. It's been too long. I got your message about needing a safe place to... She stopped mid-sentence as she caught sight of Elena stepping down from the ship. Holy stars. Is that who I think it is? Sarah Chun, meet Elena Vesquez, Wren said. Elena. Sarah is one of the smartest people in the Sky Cities, and more importantly, she's someone we can trust. Elena offered a shy smile, and Wren noticed several people in the landing bay stopping to stare. Her luminescent skin and silver hair made her impossible to ignore, even in a city known for accepting the unusual and extraordinary. We need somewhere private to talk, Wren said quietly. What I found down there, it changes everything. Sarah nodded, her engineer's mind already working. My workshop, it's shielded for sensitive electronics work, so we won't be overheard. She looked at Elena again, noting the way the girl's skin seemed to pulse gently with its own inner light. And I think we're going to need some privacy for this conversation. Sarah's workshop was located in one of Freehaven's quieter sections, a converted cargo bay that she transformed into a combination laboratory and living space. The walls were lined with workbenches covered in half-assembled devices, experimental technologies, and prototype systems. It was the kind of place where someone could work on projects that weren't quite ready for public scrutiny. Okay, Sarah said once they were settled around a table in the workshop's main area. Start from the beginning. What did you find down there? Wren told the story, with Elena adding details about her life in the research facility and the Aurora Protocol. As he spoke, Sarah's expression grew increasingly grave, particularly when he described a medical file suggesting that the Council had prior knowledge of the solar flare. Show me the data, Sarah said when he finished. Zara connected her equipment to Sarah's workstation, uploading the files they copied from the research facility. Sarah studied the genetic modifications, the medical procedures, and the timeline of the Aurora Protocol with the focused intensity of someone used to analyzing complex technical information. This is incredible, she murmured, scrolling through pages of genetic analysis. The level of precision required for these modifications, it's decades ahead of anything we have now. But the implications. She looked up at Elena, who was examining one of Sarah's prototype devices with obvious scientific curiosity. If this data is accurate, Elena isn't just immune to radiation. She's been engineered to thrive in the post-flare environment. What do you mean? Wren asked. The cellular modifications don't just protect her from radiation. They allow her to process it as an energy source, Sarah explained. In effect, she's become adapted to a world where background radiation is the norm rather than the exception. She's not just a survivor of the old world. She's a citizen of the new one. Elena looked up from the device she'd been studying. Dr. Morrison used to say that I was a bridge between the world that was and the world that would be. I never really understood what he meant until now. There's something else, Sarah said, her voice troubled. I've seen some of these genetic markers before in classified research documents that were circulated among the original Sky City engineers. The Council has been working on population genetics projects for years, supposedly to ensure genetic diversity in the Sky Cities. What kind of projects? Torres asked. Breeding programs, Sarah said bluntly. They've been carefully managing reproduction in the Sky Cities, controlling who has children and with whom. They claim it's to prevent genetic bottlenecks, but some of us have suspected there was a larger agenda. Ren felt a chill run down his spine. You think they're trying to create a specific type of human? I think they're trying to create a ruling class, Sarah replied. People who are genetically superior to the general population, better adapted to the post-flare world. And if they have access to the Aurora Protocol data, they could create their own radiation-immune population, Elena finished, understanding immediately. People who could rule both the sky cities and the surface. But that's not the worst part, Sarah continued. If they really did know about the solar flare in advance, if they deliberately allowed billions of people die while saving only a select few, then they're responsible for the greatest genocide in human history, Ren said quietly. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Elena sat down heavily in one of Sarah's chairs, her luminescent skin dimming with emotion. Dr. Morrison was right to be afraid, she said. If the council finds out about me, they'll either try to use me for their breeding program or eliminate me as a threat to their plans. Neither of those things is going to happen, Ren said firmly. We won't let them. But what can we do? Kim asked. If the council really controls the sky cities, they control New Geneva and a few of the other corporate cities, Sarah corrected. But Freehaven, Sanctuary, and several of the smaller cities operate independently. We've been building a network of free cities for years, sharing technology and resources without council oversight. A resistance network, Torres realized. We prefer to think of it as an alternative civilization, Sarah said with a slight smile. But yes, in effect, it's a resistance. We've been waiting for something that would expose the council's true agenda and give people a reason to break free from their control. She looked at Elena, then at the genetic data displayed on her workstation. I think we just found it. Over the next several hours, Sarah arranged for a series of private meetings with key figures in Freehaven's leadership. The city operated on a council system where decisions were made by consensus among representatives from different sectors: engineering, agriculture, medicine, security, and trade. Unlike New Geneva's Resource Council, which was appointed by corporate interests, Freehaven's leaders were elected by their constituents. The meetings were held in secure locations throughout the city, with Elena telling her story to small groups of people who had the authority to act on the information. The reaction was consistent: shock at the scientific implications, horror at the political ramifications, and determination to prevent the council from gaining access to Elena or the Aurora Protocol data. We need to get this information to the other free cities, said Dr. Amanda Ross, Freehaven's chief medical officer, after reviewing Elena's medical files. If the council really is planning some kind of genetic manipulation program, the other cities need to know about it. But we also need to be careful, added Security Chief Miguel Santos. If word of this gets back to the council prematurely, they might move against the free cities before we're ready to defend ourselves. What about Elena? Asked Agricultural Director Lisa Park. She can't stay hidden forever, and she's too important to risk losing. I've been thinking about that, Sarah said. There's a research station in the outer atmosphere, about 50 kilometers above the highest sky city. It was originally built for astronomical observation, but it's been abandoned for years. With some modifications, it could serve as a safe house, completely isolated and defensible if necessary. You want to hide her in space? Ren asked. I want to give her a place where she can be safe while we figure out our next move, Sarah corrected, and where she can continue her own research. The Aurora Protocol data includes information about other potential modification procedures, ways to adapt human beings to different post-flare environments. With the right equipment, Elena might be able to develop treatments that could help all of humanity. Elena had been quiet during most of the discussion, but now she spoke up. I want to help, she said. Dr. Morrison spent his whole life working on ways to help people survive in the new world. If I can continue that work, if I can help other people the way the modifications help me, it would be dangerous, Dr. Ross warned. If the council discovers what you're doing, everything is dangerous now, Elena replied with a maturity that belied her apparent age. But doing nothing is the most dangerous choice of all. As the meetings concluded and plans began to take shape, Ren found himself impressed by the speed and efficiency of Freehaven's decision-making process. Unlike the bureaucratic delays that characterized New Geneva's government, the Free Cities leaders were able to reach consensus quickly and begin implementing their decisions immediately. Within hours, Sarah's engineering teams were preparing the abandoned research station for a habitation. Supply ships were being loaded with equipment, food, and materials needed to establish a secret laboratory. Communication systems were being established to link the research station with a network of free cities. Most importantly, discreet messages were being sent to trusted contacts in the other independent cities, warning them about the Council's potential plans and inviting them to join a coordinated response. "How long do you think we have before the Council notices we're missing?" Ren asked Torres as they prepared the Wanderer for another flight. "The salvage mission was supposed to take 3 days," Torres replied. "We've been gone for 2. If we don't check in by tomorrow morning, they'll start asking questions. Then we need to be gone by then," Ren decided. "Elena, are you ready for another trip?" The girl nodded, clutching her bag of belongings and the precious data crystal. "I've never been in space before," she admitted. "Is it very different from flying the atmosphere?" "You'll love it," Sarah assured her. "The view of Earth from above the clouds is incredible, even in its current state. And the research station has observation decks where you can see the stars without any atmospheric interference." As they prepared for departure, Ren felt a sense of anticipation mixed with dread. They were embarking on something that could change the course of human civilization, either by exposing the Council's conspiracy and freeing humanity from their control, or by triggering a conflict that could destroy what remained of their species. But looking at Elena, seeing the hope and determination in her luminous eyes, he knew they were making the right choice. She represented more than just scientific advancement or political resistance. She was proof that humanity could adapt, could evolve, could become something better than what they'd been before the flare. As the Wanderer lifted off from Freehaven's landing bay and began its ascent toward the abandoned research station, Ren watched the Sky City shrink below them. Soon, it was just another gleam of light in the endless expanse of clouds that shrouded the wounded Earth. But above them, the stars waited, and with them, the possibility of a future worth fighting for. The research station Kepler 7 floated in the thin atmosphere 50 kilometers above the highest Sky City, a forgotten relic from humanity's more optimistic past. Originally designed to study distant stars and search for signs of extraterrestrial life, it had been abandoned when the solar flare made long-term astronomical observation impossible. The radiation storms that now constantly buffeted Earth's upper atmosphere played havoc with sensitive instruments. Sarah's engineering teams had worked around the clock to make the station habitable again, installing new life support systems, communication arrays, and laboratory equipment. As the Wanderer docked with the station's main airlock, Elena pressed her face to the window in wonder. "It's so quiet up here," she said. "I can't hear the Geiger counters anymore." Indeed, the background radiation that constantly plagued the surface in Sky Cities was dramatically reduced at this altitude. Elena's luminescent skin had dimmed to a soft glow, no longer constantly processing the gamma radiation that bathed the lower atmosphere. "Welcome to your new home," Sarah said as they cycled through the airlock. "At least until we figure out what to do next." The station's interior had been designed for a crew of 12, with comfortable living quarters, work areas, and the crown jewel, an observation deck with a clear dome that offered a spectacular view of the Earth below and the stars above. Elena gasped when she saw it, immediately moving to the transparent aluminum windows. Below them, the cloud layer that perpetually covered Earth stretched the horizon like a gray ocean, broken here and there by the lights of Sky Cities floating in the atmospheric currents. Above, the stars shone with clarity impossible to achieve on the surface, unmarred by atmospheric distortion. "Dr. Morrison would have loved this," Elena said softly. "He used to tell me stories about the stars, about what it was like before the flare, when people could see them clearly from the ground." "Now you can see them more clearly than anyone has in decades," Sarah pointed out. "And you can continue his work in the best possible conditions." The laboratory they'd installed was state-of-the-art by Sky City standards, with quantum computers, genetic sequencers, and medical diagnostic equipment that surpassed anything Elena had worked with in the underground facility. More importantly, it was completely isolated from Council surveillance. "The quantum encryption on our communication system should keep us hidden from any monitoring," Sarah explained as she showed Elena around the lab. We can stay in contact with the free cities, but the Council won't be able to intercept our transmissions. At least, not unless they develop better decryption technology, Torres added pessimistically. They'd need quantum computers more advanced than anything we know they have, Sarah replied. And if they have that kind of technology, we're in trouble anyway. Elena was already examining the genetic sequencing equipment with obvious excitement. This is incredible. With this kind of processing power, I could analyze the Aurora Protocol modifications in detail, maybe even develop new procedures. What kind of procedures? Ren asked. Elena pulled out her data crystal and connected it to the laboratory's main computer. Dr. Morrison's notes suggest that the radiation immunity modifications could be adapted for different environments. High altitude, low oxygen, extreme temperatures. Basically, we could help people survive anywhere on post-flare Earth. The implications were staggering. If Elena could develop genetic modifications that allowed humans to live safely on the planet's surface, the sky cities would no longer be necessary for survival. People could reclaim the Earth, rebuild civilization on solid ground. It would change everything, Sarah breathed. The Council's power is based on controlling access to the sky cities. If people could survive on the surface, they'd lose their monopoly on human survival, Ren finished. No wonder they want to keep this technology secret. As Elena began her work, analyzing the Aurora Protocol data and designing new experimental procedures, the team established regular communication with a network of free cities. The response to their revelations was swift and decisive. Sanctuary, the largest of the independent cities, immediately began implementing additional security measures and started discreet preparations for a potential conflict with the Council-controlled cities. Harmony, a smaller agricultural city, offered to provide food and supplies for an extended operation. New Kyoto, known for its advanced technology sector, began developing countermeasures against potential Council surveillance and attack systems. But it was a message from Dr. James Crawford in Sanctuary that provided the most shocking revelation. I've been reviewing historical records from the pre-flare period. Crawford's voice came through the quantum-encrypted communication system, cross-referencing the Aurora Protocol timeline with solar observation data and government communications. What I found is disturbing beyond imagination. Ren, Sarah, and Elena gathered around the communication station as Crawford continued his report. The solar flare wasn't a natural phenomenon, he said. It was artificially triggered. Someone used a series of nuclear devices deployed in the sun's corona to destabilize a solar magnetic field line, causing the massive coronal mass ejection that devastated Earth. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena's face had gone pale, her luminescent skin flickering with emotional distress. You're saying someone deliberately caused a flare? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The evidence is circumstantial but compelling, Crawford replied. 3 days before the flare, a series of automated spacecraft launched from secret facilities around the world. The spacecraft were equipped with fusion warheads and solar navigation systems. Their trajectory would have taken them directly into the sun's corona. But who would do such a thing? Ren demanded. Who would murder 8 billion people? The same people who developed the Aurora Protocol, Elena said quietly. The same people who built the sky cities and decided who would be allowed to survive. Crawford's next words confirmed her suspicion. I've traced the funding for both the spacecraft program and the Aurora Protocol research. Both were financed through a network of shell companies ultimately controlled by the same organization, the group that now calls itself the Resource Council. They killed the world, Torres said, his voice filled with horror and rage. They killed everyone except the people they chose to save. And now they want to create a new world with themselves as gods, Sarah added. A world where only their chosen genetic lines are allowed to survive and reproduce. Elena turned away from the communication station, walking to the observation deck, where she could look down at the cloud-covered Earth. Her luminescent skin was pulsing with agitation, and when she spoke, her voice was filled with a determination that surprised them all. Dr. Morrison suspected something like this, she said. Near the end, he kept talking about the great crime and how important it was that the truth be revealed. He made me promise that if I ever had the chance to expose what really happened, I would do it, no matter the cost. Elena, Ren said gently. "You don't have to carry that burden alone." "Yes, I do," she replied, turning back to face them. "I'm the only direct survivor of their experiment. I'm the living proof of what they did and what they're planning to do. If I don't stop them, who will?" Over the following days, Elena threw herself into her research with an intensity that impressed and worried her companions in equal measure. She worked 16-hour days, analyzing genetic sequences, running computer simulations, and developing theoretical procedures for new modifications. The Aurora Protocol data contained not just the procedures that had been used on Elena, but blueprints for dozens of other potential modifications. Adaptations for high-altitude living, improvements to oxygen processing efficiency, enhanced resistance to temperature extremes, even modifications that could allow humans to process different types of radiation as energy sources. It's like they were planning to create an entire new species. Elena explained during one of their regular briefings. Not just people who could survive in the post-flare world, but people who could thrive in any environment they chose. "How close are you to being able to replicate these procedures?" Sarah asked. "The radiation immunity modifications are relatively straightforward," Elena replied. "With the right equipment and volunteers, I could probably implement them within a few months. The more complex adaptations would take longer, maybe a year or two of development and testing." "And the Council? How close do you think they are to implementing their own version?" Elena's expression grew troubled. "If they have access to similar data and equipment, they could be much further along than we realize. The Aurora Protocol research was completed decades ago. They had all this time to refine and improve the procedures." It was Torres who raised a question they were all thinking. What if they've already started? What if there are already modified humans in the Council-controlled cities? The implications were chilling. If the Council had been secretly modifying selected individuals for decades, they could have an entire population of enhanced humans ready to take control of the post-flare world. Enhanced humans who would see themselves as superior to the ordinary survivors in the Sky Cities. "We need more information," Ren decided. "We need to know what the Council is really doing in their cities." "I might be able to help with that," Sarah said. "I still have contacts in New Geneva, people who work in the technical sectors and might be able to observe unusual activities. But approaching them would be risky." "Everything we're doing is risky," Elena pointed out. "But the risk of doing nothing is greater." As they prepared to reach out to their contacts in the Council cities, Elena made a discovery that changed everything. Deep in the Aurora Protocol files, she found a section of data that had been hidden behind multiple encryption layers, data that Dr. Morrison had apparently discovered shortly before his death. "There are others," she announced during an emergency communication session with the Free Cities. "Other research facilities, other survivors of the modification program." According to these files, there were 12 primary research sites around the world, each working on different aspects of the Aurora Protocol. 12 sites. Dr. Crawford's voice crackled through the quantum communicator. How many had successful results? Elena scrolled to classified data, her luminescent eyes reflecting the light from the computer screens. 7 sites reported successful modifications before the flare hit. That could mean dozens of enhanced individuals scattered across the planet, possibly still alive. Or they could be under Council control, Sarah said grimly. Some of them might be. Elena agreed, but others might be hiding, just like I was. If we could find them, if we could bring them together, we could build our own enhanced population, Ren realized. People who could reclaim the Earth's surface and challenge the Council's monopoly on survival. But first, we need to find them, Torres pointed out. And that means going back down to the surface, probably to some of the most heavily irradiated areas on the planet. Elena smiled, her luminescent skin brightening with excitement and determination. Then it's a good thing you know someone who's immune to radiation. As they began planning expeditions to locate the other research facilities and any surviving enhanced individuals, Elena continued her work on developing new modification procedures. But now her research had a different focus. Not just creating people who could survive in the post-flare world, but creating people who could fight for it. The war for humanity's future was about to begin, and Elena Vasquez, the luminescent girl from the underground laboratory, would be leading the charge.